Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Lady Justice Talks, where curiosity meets law. Today you're here with your host Anita and our two beautiful guests. Please introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Hamza Taleb. I am a fourth-year law and society major with a minor in creative writing.
Hello, my name is Hadi. I'm also in my third year of human rights and equity studies, and my position is a social justice and advocacy coordinator here at Willa.
Oh yeah, my role my role is vice president of academics.
I was about to say, okay, period. Very nice.
Yeah,
So today's episode is about men in law and men supporting women in the legal fields and just the environment. So let's just start us off easy. I know you both said that you're part of WILA, which stands for Women in Law Association. What made you guys decide to join WILA?
Really good question. I think for me personally, just being around women for the most of my life, my family and friends, I've learned that as a man, I have certain privileges and certain access to certain things and certain rooms that they do not. And, being an undergraduate student that wants to pursue, hopefully, a career in the law, it was kind of a perfect opportunity to use, my lived experience and the things that I've, seen, while still roping that in with being a positive advocate for women in the law.
Aww.
that's so sweet.
Hadi, what about you?
I feel like my experience was fairly similar. I guess my upbringing, growing up around a lot of women, it made me acutely aware of different issues that women face, and especially when that comes to, academics and their career goals and whatnot. And actually, in terms of Willa, I stumbled across it on my Instagram.
Of course, okay. Marketing, okay.
And my original intent was to actually send it to my friend because I saw that there was opportunities posted. And the more I looked in on the Instagram, I saw that it was inclusive to everybody, and it was, men can join anybody that wanted to. And so I thought, why not apply as well? I'm always trying to help, the women around me to find opportunities and whatnot. And so I thought this would be a good way for me to do that firsthand.
That is very nice. So do you think that's how men, like what you guys said, is how men can share their knowledge and experiences to help women in their careers, specifically the legal field? Like your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it all depends at what level, right? So the levels I would say would differ because you have executives, right, that are, in at least in the law, still, unfortunately, most of them are men.
Yeah, it's a male-dominated field.
It is a male-dominated field,
yeah.
exactly. So it's definitely a male-dominated field. So a lot of the executives are men. So
thankfully, it's been getting better, though.
right, but that's because of stuff like this. That's why that advocacy and, clubs and organizations like the Women in Law Association is important because it offers, obviously, a chance for community and community building for like-minded women, but at the same time, opening, membership and executive membership, especially for men, is also a really good way to ensure that connections are being made between men and women, and that the men in the rooms are able to fully grasp the certain privileges they have and are able to use those privileges to uplift their female coworkers or counterparts.
That was very beautifully said.
I think to just bounce off of that, I don't necessarily see it as a negative thing to have men in positions of power. I think it's very important to look at the framing and to look at what type of men are in those positions. As we were kind of speaking about our experiences with, always being surrounded by women and whatnot, we have a different perspective in terms of how we view the world and how we interact with women. And I think that a lot of men fail to grasp that and fail to see how women experience life differently. And I think when those men are in positions of power, I think that's when it's most impactful in a negative way. And so I think that men could be very powerful allies if they don't even have to experience, like womanhood on a first basis experience. They don't have to be surrounded by women constantly. It's just about being open to learn and being open to acknowledge your power and be able to use that effectively, in whichever way.
Yeah, because in a recent event that we had by Willa, our Halloween panel, one of our lawyers mentioned how many of the opportunities, many of the help that she had gotten had been from her male coworkers, actually. So so you're right. It's about how you actually use that power and how you said you understood that you have certain privileges that women around you have not really had. So it's really about the perspective and how you put it into work and how you are as a person, right?
Okay.
So how do you think men can make it easier for women to actually express their ideas and go forward, try to succeed, improve? How can
I don't know if easier is the word I would use, but just I feel like to make it safer and to make it more to validate it, because a lot of times you have women in the professional fields, whether that's law or medicine or real estate or any of these professional fields, that, when they propose a certain, professional project, or when they lead a board meeting, and obviously it's definitely gotten better through time, but obviously we're still struggling with some of these issues. So when you have these women in these places that propose these ideas, it's often ignored or overlooked.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have the men coming in, and it's not a generalization. I'm just saying, this happens pretty often. That's why we're talking about it, right? You have these men come in and essentially overlook a woman's proposition and then make the same proposition and be validated and listened to. So I feel like to reverse the formula and to make it safer for women and to make their ideas and opinions and initiatives more valid is to essentially, when a woman is presenting an idea, you cannot control the other men in the room, right? But as a man yourself, or myself, you can control yourself. So you can sit there and make sure that you're actively listening and actively paying attention. So when the time comes, if the room, agrees, or if the room kind of goes along with what this woman is presenting, that's great. But if not, then now you have the opportunity to use your voice and kind of guide and shape the other men's understanding. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, men that think this way, because it's not all men that think this way, you have to be clear, but the men that do think this way, they're not going to listen to a woman. So the men that think this way and have this prejudice. From? Where do you think? I do not have the professional qualifications to answer that question, but I would say, the most common one is childhood, upbringing, these kind of sociological factors. But
yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So I don't want to ramble. I don't want to ramble either. So
no, of course not.
Basically, that the men that think this way are only going to listen to men, right? Because that's how their brain is wired, unfortunately. So, if a man comes and presents these ideas not as his own, but just kind of like, oh, hey, so and so said this, they're going to respond to it better. Coming from a man, unfortunately. Now, if this practice is repeated, then hopefully, I guess the desirable outcome would be that there will come a time where those men start listening just directly to the women.
So that also answers You did great. It also answered like another question I had about how, like, what practical steps like male mentors specifically could take to help women like seek new opportunities and all. And like, Hadi, did you have anything to add on that?
I think to
Like-
start,
Mm-hmm.
if women are in a position where they're being mentored by a man, I think that could be very daunting, and
Yeah.
whether that's admitting to certain flaws, that might be scary, or pointing out things that they need help with, that might be scary. So I think the first thing that any man in that position could do to make it a more comfortable experience is to overtly express that it's okay to ask for help. I'm not here to judge you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Just being comfortable with the discomfort, I think that's a really important thing.
Make it a
It's just-
safe space.
Yeah, like
'Cause-
allowing
yeah,
for those
'cause
feelings to
also,
be
like,
shared.
I don't know if everybody feels this, but sometimes as like an individual, specifically a woman, you have that thing in the like in your career that you just want to constantly prove yourself to prove that you're just as good at everybody else, as especially if it's a male dominated field. You constantly want to prove that you're just as good enough, that you're capable enough, that you're able to do the same jobs that like your other coworkers that are male are able to do, specifically like in the legal field, so yeah.
But I
yeah.
think that being just as good as a man should not be the,
Yeah, but
the
unfortunately,
objective,
yeah,
right?
but unfortunately,
But yeah, obviously.
Unfortunately,
so
that's
I think that just like, if as a like
just as qualified for the position.
exactly, you know what I mean. And for you as a woman coming in, I think so you want to do law, right? In the
Yeah,
field.
of course.
So
yeah.
if
Hopefully.
if for you as a woman coming into the legal field, like how would you want your male coworkers to view you?
Honestly,
Wait,
for
can I ask
me,
the interviewer a question? Is that okay?
of course, go
Okay.
ahead. It's fine.
He's taking over.
I'm taking over.
Love it.
He's stealing
I'm
my
coming
job,
for your
guys.
job.
She's going for a job.
What's new?
No, but that's a really good question because it just gives another perspective. For me specifically, like you said, I try not to think about it like that I'm good enough as a man having my job, but obviously I've seen that happen because that's like the standard that it's usually set, like just generally just based on personal experiences from what I've seen. But me as a woman, hopefully when I become a lawyer, you said how would I want men
Yeah,
to
how
know?
would you want your male coworkers to kind of view you as a professional?
The same.
Right.
Why would I even have to think about the fact that they
Exactly.
view me differently? You know
Exactly,
what I mean? The same. Like I went to law school the same as you guys. I probably got similar grades as the people that are working in that. I'm probably just as qualified, like you said, as the people that are working in that. Why would I be like looked at differently? But but unfortunately, again, we've heard that in courtrooms, specifically in like criminal law, for example, or corporate law, that's like very male dominated. Like a lot of times, I've heard about female lawyers talk about like they go into the courtroom and nobody thinks that they're the lawyer.
Right.
Like how insane is that? You know what I mean?
And I think also like there's a huge misconception about lawyers, all lawyers, but that you have to be like a shark to be a good lawyer.
Yeah.
Like you have to be cutthroat.
Yeah.
And you have to be like aggressive to be a good lawyer.
Especially in like criminal and corporate.
Yeah, especially because in criminal law, obviously you're either on the prosecution or defense. Somebody's freedom and liberty is directly in your control. So there is a level of tenacity that is required, or that I guess should be exercised. But at the same time, we have these misconceptions that okay, like because being a lawyer requires this like ferocious kind of like take and this like kind of this just really cutthroat and direct approach. Women can't do that.
Yeah.
Women can't be like
because we can't be,
right?
which is actually before
Yeah.
we actually again in one of our events at one of our Willow panels we talked about this. Our female lawyers that joined us talked about whether it's a myth or not that you have to be aggressive.
Exactly.
And like no, even men don't have to be aggressive.
Yeah, exactly.
Even men don't have to be. Obviously, if somebody is treating you a certain way, what really struck out to me, which I've seen a lot too, is that one of them said that they're obviously not aggressive, because aggressive is also like being rude and just those.
Yeah.
It could like add up to those
Mhm.
stuff. So I remember like them saying that like a lot of times they're not rude, nobody else is rude, everything's fine, everybody goes according to what they're supposed to be doing. But then you're always going to encounter people, not even just like in the legal field, in law school, just anywhere, you're going to encounter people who are aggressive with you. And then it's just how you respond to that, like this level of aggressivity like that you show back to them, and how you handle that situation, which is what really important. But yeah, that is a very big misconception that you're supposed to be like really aggressive in those fields, which I guess also makes another thing hard about like women, or like scares them or intimidates them perhaps about joining those fields. Yeah,
For sure. I
Honey?
think while it's still this idea that it's a myth, it's something that's so perpetuated
Yeah.
and something that's so praised, but it's also about framing, because we obviously know like when men are aggressive, when men are abrasive, and you know they take control and they quote unquote dominate, all this very like violent, aggressive language
Yeah.
around it, it's viewed positively. It's viewed as this
Yeah.
man is, you know, in control, in a position of power.
He's
But
strong,
then
yeah.
when a woman is doing that, when a woman is applying the
Exactly.
same principles to the way that she acts and the way that she conducts herself, whether that's in a courtroom or just in a professional setting, it's viewed as sassy, as bratty.
No, or like literally, I remember somebody telling me that they had received a very like harsh email, like rude wordings from one of their opposing counsels and stuff, and they wrote an email in the same manner that he did, and that person called them out, like, why are you giving me that attitude, like, why are you talking to me that way, even though she literally framed her email the same way that he did. You know what I mean? It's like stereotypes, bias.
And I think a lot of, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. A lot of
No, of
the
course, go ahead.
we'll talk about men and women, and I'm just like cutting off the voice of women. No, I think a lot of these issues and behaviors, like I would say most of the time, are, you know, subconscious, right? Like a lot of the prejudices and the biases that men have towards women, a lot of the time it is a subconscious thing. Not to say that like, oh, it's not their fault, it's like making excuse. It's not an excuse, but rather than excuse, maybe it's a maybe a way of understanding you know, where it comes from. Because I feel like if we're really trying to dissect and resolve these issues, then a big part of that is to understand, you know, the factors leading up to it, right? So I think, like that example with the opposing counsel in the email, I think that for him, you know, he had, like in his own mind, maybe, you know, he has the right to speak this way.
Okay.
You know, because maybe he has seniority, or maybe he has, you know, he has a reputation, right? Like you said, a man has
and nobody hasn't called him out.
and nobody has
How
called
dare
him
she
out.
speak to me in that manner.
Exactly. So when you have those types of people that, you know, either think of themselves a certain way and then use that to kind of give themselves, you know, free kind of aim to just kind of act however, and then someone, like you said in the example,
Stands
a woman,
up to them,
a woman goes on and gives them kind of a taste of their own medicine type of thing.
Challenges their power.
Exactly.
Their
it challenges
ego,
their power.
yeah.
So, yeah, and then subconsciously, that's why he might have been like, well, why?
Like, why are
speaking to
you
like
giving me
that,
attitude?
You know? But the
Like,
whole time,
yeah.
she's just, you know, giving him the same
Yeah.
type of energy. So
I think also like another thing that it points to, I guess, a grander issue in the bigger scheme of things is just the discomfort of being able to call out negative behavior, whether that's from men or women. As we know, the legal field is very toxic. It's riddled with a lot of toxic people.
Unfortunately,
And there's a really big discomfort around being able to stand up to it, to be able to call it out, because it's viewed as an inconvenience.
Yeah.
Who wants to be called out for something that they're doing, whether that's conscious or subconscious,
Right.
to then be able to fix it. And that really comes from a place of maturity, to be able to understand that, like, yeah, I might be doing something wrong, whether that's, you know, like on purpose or whether that's just how I am, and to then be able to fix it. And not a lot of people are willing to do that adjustment.
Yeah, I agree. I've definitely seen it in the works, like even yeah, that also like brings me to my next question about biases. What do you think are some common biases that men in law might hold without realizing? And like, how do you think? Well, you guys mentioned a lot of ways that you could work towards changing their perspectives and their ideas, but just to get a little bit more specific, like, so what are some of the biases you might think that men in law hold?
I would say, first and foremost, that women aren't able to step up to the task.
Or
They
like
aren't
be as aggressive like that.
Yeah,
Like,
as aggressive or as driven to be able to meet that end goal, or to go, toe to toe with another, like a male counterpart, for example. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. And in relation to that, also the time commitment. I feel like a lot of men, especially in the legal field, don't feel as though women can put in enough, time and energy and dedication into their
especially when they have families.
Yeah,
that's what I
especially
was
when they
gonna
have
say,
families.
yeah.
I think
So-
that's such a big issue.
Yeah, I think like the whole, so like the idea of like the mother, like the working mother, right? It's like this like insane like foreign idea of like, wow, you have this woman, a child, you're like, so and it's been, documented through obviously real life, and you have like TV shows and movies, and they all have this trope of like this woman that's like an amazing like she's successful in her professional career, and then she has a baby.
Oh, that's gonna set her.
And
like,
then she has this
put her back so
existential
much.
crisis on how she's gonna manage
Yeah.
her work and her baby. And while it is true, yes, like a woman has to carry the child, and has to, and that should not be ignored. Those needs and those wants. But after that, it shouldn't. I mean, if there is equal responsibility between the father and the mother, then there. Why are we sitting here trying to? Okay, well, how is she gonna, and then
because I think that goes back to like the stereotypical like traditional ways about how the man is the breadwinner and the woman is the caretaker.
Like patriarchal.
Exactly.
But like, what if I want like I'm working hard to, obviously when I have children, I think for all of us, our children would be first for us. But like, I'm getting that degree. I want to be working as
for
well.
Reason,
like
You're doing it for a
I
reason.
love my like I'm gonna love my future job. Like, why would I need to make it? Like, I understand making sacrifices for your children, but why is it when between two people, like the father as well, why should I be the only one making that sacrifice? Like, understand if like they want to, like if the woman wants to stay home, whatever, that's fine. Like, I would want to like take care of my children, of course, 100%. Like, that's not reducing any of my responsibility. Wanting to work is not reducing any of my responsibility. It's just like what, like, or women. There are women that take care of their kids just fine and they work as well.
I think that's the biggest argument against this idea that women can't balance it. But I think it's still so deeply rooted in this bigger issue with saying that, women can work and they can have kids at the same time, and that should be fine. But that's still not targeting the main problem, which is taking the responsibility off of men. Men don't get that same sort of framing when it comes to them having kids and them being able to work, because it's usually the woman that has to, take time off of work and take care of the child. But that's so, like, whether that's inequitable or just unequal on a general standard, why isn't the man also putting in just as much of that effort to take some of that burden off of a woman who just
it's
had
his
a child
as well, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even like asking too much. It's literally just like, it's your child too. No?
It's just put on the woman to take that responsibility of taking time off of work and focusing on the child, and that's still so deeply rooted in these patriarchal standards.
It's just very like traditional stereotypical type of ways, and it also reminds me of like when women do normal stuff for their kids, like it's seen as normal, but when men do something like minimum, they're like praised for it.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, and even in our like in my I guess Hadi's as well, our cultural background, and I mean all of us really, like
we're cousins
from the same kind of peninsula, I guess. Our culture, Middle Eastern, Persian, Arab, our women are held at a very high standard.
Yeah.
Like very high, to the point where it's not a foreign thing, before these colonial ideas came to our precious lands, for a woman to go and work just like the man, right?
Yeah.
So when you have people that, when you have women especially that, for example, my own mom, she got her last degree at 55, and she had my brother and me.
Good for her.
And she was a neurologist.
I think my mom got her master's when we were kids too.
Exactly. So it's like this, and then also like in the professional world, when a woman announces, "Oh, I'm having a baby," to the coworkers, right, or to their bosses or whatever, congratulations, and all these things are being said, and then the first, and maybe not by everybody, because once again we don't want to generalize, but
these are just based on our personal experience.
Yeah, our
from
personal
what
experience,
I've seen.
exactly, and heard, and so a lot of the times you have coworkers, friends, etc. They'll hit them
Start
with
questioning.
Well, how
are
are you gonna do it?
Like what happens after your maternity leave is over?
But then when the man comes, oh guys, we're pregnant. Also, this whole thing of we're pregnant.
Right.
You're not pregnant. Your wife or your partner, your girlfriend, whatever, they're pregnant, but you're not pregnant. But
I thought that's how I viewed that. We're pregnant, as in I actually found it kind of cute because I thought it's like. Joining he's actually like stepping up and being like,
maybe
we're
I'm like a
pregnant.
I think it's a
but-
very nuanced thing because at one end it's acknowledging that they are part of this and they're involved.
I thought
at the
that.
other end,
But then it's like
taking on
this
this
she's
responsibility.
yeah,
They're
she's the
taking
one.
on this like fake responsibility
Right.
of like carrying the child when that's not the case.
I guess I viewed it too optimistic.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. Maybe I'm just a cynic, but
too optimistic for the.
I don't know.
System.
I think like I've heard women say like he like when you're in the delivery room, like the man is not the one in pain. You know what I mean?
That is true.
I guess
those differences are there, but then the standards that are held to women and men are still the same.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make any sense because if we're gonna make these distinctions, why isn't like the system or these institutions kind of catering to these differences? They're not. They're setting up women for failure because even though they're saying, well, everybody has an equal chance, an equal opportunity at this. If you really think about like historically how the system was made and who it was made for, it wasn't made for women. It was made for these white men that, are just driven to do their career and have no, aspirations of building a family. And so they have all this time and they have all these opportunities. Whereas when it comes to how, society is now, that's not the case. There are women that are aspiring to do these things, women with kids, women in their 30s, 40s, whatever that may be. And the system isn't changing with these cultural and societal changes. And so it's really pit against, everybody that's not a white man that has nothing else to do other than, his career. And so it's a really inequitable system because now, unlike before, it's not as much of a gate-kept career path, but at the same time the workload is still the same. So it begs the question of should the system be reformed to cater to these differences that people have just within their lives.
So you don't think like the maternity leave is just enough?
I think
there should be more
that's a
improvement?
bandage. I think that's a bandage on the bigger issue because that's not fixing the system. That's saying, well, you're not going to be able to do both of these things at the same time. Here's a break from your work so you can focus on this other thing. Whereas I feel that it should be, okay, you can have your kid maybe if you need some time off or if you need to work from home, whatever that case is, but you're still able to do both things at the same time. And I think that's the problem. It's very like you have to pick one or the other. And again, like maternity leave is just putting a Band-Aid on the bigger issue. The systemic issue is still not fixed. I think that's a really big issue.
Yeah. Just to piggyback off of that, I think, a lot of times when we have these issues, whether it be, the patriarchy or, capitalism or any of these like very grand, because we have to think about it's a system, like you said. It's not. It is a way of thinking at the same time, but it also is a system which means that this system has infiltrated, or maybe it's not infiltrated, but been there the whole time, since their very conception, these institutions, that, you know, this way of thinking in the system has been there in everything, in our schools, in our hospitals, in our, you know, boardrooms, in everywhere, right? And I think a lot of people find it hard to grasp that idea, because it's like, well, you know, they don't, once again, I was saying before, a lot of it is unconscious, you know. So a lot of it, they're not really even aware of the practices that they're doing or the way they're thinking. And even, you know, when, like what we were talking about before with the maternity leave and the parenthood, when a man says, "Oh, I'm having a baby," nobody's asking him, "Oh, how are you going to do both?" Right? And they don't even know. Like they might, like, it might be a perfectly, you know, respectful person. They might not even mean it in that way.
It's just so subconscious.
It's a subconscious, right? It's, oh, well, like, you know, a man's not gonna have to sacrifice, you know, any of their professional kind of. There's no professional risk for him, but for her, it's a, oh my God, are you going to be okay, and all this and all. Maybe you need extra time off, and like that kind of snowballs into something else. So it's tricky. It's more, it's evolved.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, it's evolved more than just like, oh, the man gets paid. The man gets paid more, which, by the way, it still happens. Or it's just like, oh, the men's ideas get picked and women's don't. Like, it's a lot more, like you said, nuanced. And I think these types of conversations are really beneficial in kind of
just raising,
raising awareness and unpacking a lot of it, because it's a lot more complex than we think. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that it's this extremely difficult thing to reform.
I think that's a really important point too, is framing the issue in terms of, this is so difficult, this is so grand that we're not able to change it. That's just an excuse to not change it. And we have to think about, who is this benefiting? Who is this, you know, like catering towards?
Not the women.
And not the women. And it's just a very archaic way of thinking. And as I touched upon it earlier, the system itself is in need of a lot of reform. And it's ironic that we're in this world of law and justice, and the system itself that is supposed to help you achieve that, that's supposed to help society achieve that, is within itself not just, and it's not equitable towards the people that are working very hard to provide that for the rest of society.
What do you guys think having women on the legal field, like having women on the legal field per se, like helps with creating innovative solutions? And how do you think it just empowers and it just makes the environment better? What do you think about having women on the legal field like helps with?
Do you want to take it? Or?
Sure. I'll do a little, and then we'll do a little back and forth. But
it's like more just about like what's good about having women on the legal.
It's a really good question.
Thank you.
It's a difficult question, but it's really which makes sense.
It's just like having women on your team. Like you guys work with a lot of women right now in the Women in Law Club. What
I think any sort of diversity in thinking is going to be beneficial, no matter what that is. And I think just having that diversity of thinking leads to better solutions, because it's really about perspective. And you know, whether that's lawmakers, policymakers, whoever is making these decisions that impact, you know, a greater society, needs to be in a place where they can understand and reflect on the issues in a more personal way. And whether that's having, you know, a white woman or having, you know, a woman of color, it's so important to have every single person be represented, and having, you know, differences in thought, because just one, like, very similar thinking within a space of such importance, such as law, it could be so dangerous, because nobody's going to see the issue if, you know, they all think the same and they all have the same views when it comes to society. It only takes one person to inform the rest, and, you know, if they're open to change and if they're open to hearing, you know, different perspectives, then solutions can be made. And so I think, especially when it comes to women, I think that's so important to have that diversity. It's just very helpful.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, how I see it is, in order for an institution to be positively successful, it needs to, at least on some kind of level, maybe not fully, but at least on some kind of level, it needs to reflect society. It needs to reflect societal norms. It needs to reflect the makeup of society. So oftentimes when we have these, like you said, archaic ways of thinking in our institutions that does not reflect the diversity or the socio-political makeup of society, it causes direct conflict within society. So that's why you have so many people in Canada, in the United States, in the world really, just kind of begging and pleading for things like healthcare reform, economic reform, legal reform, because the institutions are not reflecting the needs of society. So I think having women on, a legal team or in the legal field is essential to that field's success in the aspect of there are women in society. Women actually make up, I think it's like 51% of the population. So that field should reflect society. So I think that, having women on a legal team is really just as simple as staying true to that society outside of that legal office.
For sure. And I think when talking about the prevalence of women in, teams, I guess you can say, it's very important to look at, one, the prevalence and like who like these women really are. A lot of the times, these people in power, they can hire 1-2 women on a team of 50 and say, well, here you go, like we have, these 2 women. But it begs the question of, is that enough? Is that really enough to...
And that intention behind why they hire them as well.
And
why
I
are these women in
I
these
think
positions?
also, to that point, being a woman should not be the qualifying factor, of getting a position. I think
same
that
for as being a man.
Exactly. I think that I think people that are opposed to diversity hires and diversity and inclusion, I think their main critique of it is like, oh well, you're only hiring them because of their identity, right? You're only hiring them because they're a woman or because they're
a person of color,
or whatever, right? So I think that it should be said that being a woman or being a person of color or being a part of the LGBT community, it is not a qualifying. It should not be a qualifying factor.
Because we should all be treated equally.
Exactly. Yeah. But it should also not be a mitigating factor. So it shouldn't be something that disqualifies someone from a position. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think like while there shouldn't be this emphasis on this person got hired because they're a woman, this is why they were picked out. I think it's so important to not ignore that, or to not take away this idea of like, let's have a certain portion of our team be women, because to take that away and be like, we're just going to hire everybody on the same basis, we're kind of discounting the fact that women from the get-go, from their academics up to the point of seeking jobs, are not equally presented when in contrast to men. And so it's important to realize that, whether that's looking at where did they graduate from, or what previous opportunities have they had, and to be a little bit more understanding of it and forgiving of that, because they're not positioned equally from the start. And so to kind of take away this idea of let's dedicate a certain amount of positions to women kind of disqualifies the fact that from the start women are not equally positioned. And so if you want to have this idea of like equality, you have to fix the system from the start, and like that's not going to happen overnight. And so there has to be these like provisions around who gets hired, because that kind of mitigates, that puts a band-aid on these issues. But that's what we can do in the current sphere.
And I think also we should also say that like equality and this might be like, if you guys disagree with this, that's perfectly fine. To me, equality is a myth. It's not something that can be actually attained, because not everybody is equal, and not every person should be equal, in the sense that some people and some groups and some communities deserve and desire more from society than others. So you have like people that are disabled, people that have, you know, like neurological deficiencies, like these types of
So
communities.
do you mean to say that they're not presented? So do you mean to say that they're not on the same level? Like,
Not that they're
need
not.
Not
to-
necessarily. It's
like-
just that there are different facets to
Exactly.
one's identity,
Exactly.
and
Like,
so important to look at it.
intersectionality.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Great term to bring up.
I think that, like, I'm pretty sure everybody's seen this, that picture of like the child on the fence of
Yeah.
equality versus equity.
Yeah.
So I would say that equity should be the desired objective of society, because equity understands, the premise of equity is the understanding that different people need different things. And sometimes, you know, some person will need a little bit more, and some people need a little bit less. And it's not about, you know, making everybody have everybody should have access to the same opportunities, but I think that
the help that they receive, how it's
should
presented
be
to them,
exactly.
should be
It should be
modified to their
exactly.
needs.
It should
Okay.
be modified to their needs.
Okay.
And, you know, people are not one thing at one time. I'm not only an Arab man, I'm also an Arab queer man. You're not only a woman, you're a Middle Eastern Persian woman. So there are different identities encompassed into one identity. And I think that's why we see feminism and all these things in waves. You have, you know, white feminism first coming, and then you have feminism that deals with women of color, and then I guess the last kind of wave would be like trans women and things like that. So I think understanding these issues as broad, and understanding that women and other people are not just one thing. They're allowed to be multiple things at the same time. And for society to be positive and healthy, it should be able to cater each of those needs kind of holistically.
I think that was perfectly worded, and no, that was beautifully said. Do you have anything to add on,
Clip this
Hadi?
and put it in my law school application.
A little bit unrelated, but to just kind of
Actually, just copy paste all of this from there. No,
Right.
wouldn't that be
All of it.
plagiarism? Anyway,
let's not do that. But a little bit,
she's more concerned.
Right.
a little bit unrelated. But I think that's why it's so important to have associations and clubs like Willa,
And men speaking up,
and men being a
like,
part of that, because one, it really platforms, you know, different women at this young age to have that confidence to be able to partake in, you know, these very like academic and scholarly fields and professional fields starting young. And I think that's so important to I guess push them out into the world with that confidence already built, rather than having to kind of navigate that unknowing. And you know, like even with joining other clubs, other, you know, law clubs and whatnot, that might not be the case. They might not be able to attain those same positions, whereas having, you know, Willa is so important for this purpose.
I'm loving the energy, the vibes in this room. So just to bring everything together, any last thoughts or anything about how specifically men can support women, specifically in the legal field? And you can use your own personal experience, your personal ideas for answering this question. Just how can men support women?
I think, do you want to go first?
I mean, I was just going to say, I think it's one, very nuanced, and I think it's very case by case. But speaking, I guess, from my own personal commitments, I think the biggest things that we can do is, one, listen, and two, make it known that it's a place that we can listen.
Like what you're doing right now.
Yeah, and just putting that out there. I think it's so important to make things safer. And whether that's, you know, for women or men, again, like most of these very like professional
And you're not even
fields are
talking
very
about
toxic.
physically safer. You're also talking
Yeah.
about emotionally safer, mentally
Exactly.
safer.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's so important, is like one, listening, but also two, listening is not enough. And so really being able to enact change meaningfully, being able to like be comfortable with your own discomfort as a man, seeing, you know, these different inequities and injustice, like being able to point that out and be okay pointing that out, and having the confidence to, you know, speak on it and say, hey, I don't like this. I'm seeing, you know, these different, you know, XYZ injustice happening to women, and being okay with being, you know, able to speak on it, whether, you know, you're in a position of power speaking on it, or whether you're just on behalf of them advocating for them,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
make that change.
that's yeah, I definitely agree with that. And also I think, you know, it starts with you at the end of the day. Like, it starts with your own personal
The motto starts with you.
It starts with you.
Love
No,
it.
but I think no, but like seriously, like, you know, you cannot help other people without helping yourself first. And I think that for me personally, as you know, as a man, unfortunately, no.
Let me look away.
No, as a man, it was, you know, imperative for me to understand my own privileges and my own kind of biases in order to rework and restructure how I operate, you know, and how I operate towards different people, how I operate towards
like how your privileges also like take place in the fields, and how they
and I mean,
help you.
at the same time, like, we're not legal professionals quite yet, you know, hopefully very soon, so I can only speak to a certain extent
of
my
course.
experience. But I think just understanding my own privilege, and then understanding how that privilege works, understanding what makes that privilege something that can be used to help somebody else. I don't think it's a necessarily bad thing to have privilege. I think it's
how you utilize it.
I think it's a bad thing when somebody ignores their privilege and then continues to have, you know, destructive behavior surrounding other people. So I do have a certain privilege due to my gender, and so it's important for me to utilize, as you said, that privilege to uplift those who unfortunately don't have access.
And even the fact that you're recognizing the fact that you have a certain privilege, like you said, since you've like grown up around women, just the fact that you're recognizing that is also a step forward.
Yeah, and it's important also to recognize that it's a very like longitudinal process. It's not something that you can change overnight, when it's very, you know, like built into our mentality from a young age, how we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to interact with others, you know, in the world. And so I feel like people can get discouraged from trying to like be the change if they don't see that change within themselves, you know, quickly enough. And so I think it could be very daunting to try to address those mentalities. And I think it's important to, you know, again, recognize that this is something that happens over time, and it's something that you really need to unpack slowly and meaningfully, because, you know, just saying I'm going to wake up one day and it's a process, because you can't just wake up one day and be like, you know, I'm going to be better, I'm going to listen to women, I'm going to do this and that, because you're always going to find yourself in a position where you have certain, you know, unconscious bias that you otherwise didn't think, you know, you had, and it takes time to be able to, one, recognize it, and to,
but just starting
be able to address it. Yeah.
But just starting it is a very good step to take.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Just being intellectually and emotionally sound human being is, I would say, the best approach to realizing these things.
Yeah, I think summatively, like, one, it's important to platform women to be able to, you know, share their experiences, share, you know, any concerns, and to actively find ways to address the issues, because listening, again, like I said, is not enough. And so I think those are the two biggest things, is like platforming women and being willing to, you know, make the change.
Yeah, and like you guys are in the Woman in Law Club right now, and it's been a positive experience for you.
It's been a great experience for me, honestly. I've made very close friends. I've made a lot of professional acquaintances and developments. Damn, wait. Sorry. A lot of professional developments, and I'm very grateful for Willa. It's taught me a lot in a relatively short time, and I think for anybody out there that is questioning if they should join a student association or not, I think,
advertising casually.
You should definitely join the Women in Law Association. As you can see there, but also you should just join any club, any association that's in your school to get involved and to form your own personal connection.
Yep,
with
that's
your
another
university.
step.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, I loved the discussion that I had with you guys. It was so fun having you guys with me, and I love working with you guys also in Willa. So that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We'll catch you on another episode. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.